So, good morning, everyone. My name is Arafat, and I teach history on the Testbook platform. Just a minute. So, my name is Arafat, and I teach history on the Testbook platform. So, in this session, let us start discussing. Let us start our discussion on the 9th standard NCERT, the 9th standard NCERT text, that is the social science NCERT. So the first chapter of the 9th standard NCERT is on the French Revolution. Chapter point. So once again, a very good morning, everyone. So the first chapter of the 9th standard NCERT deals with the French Revolution, which is a very important topic of the world history. It is a very important topic of the world history. So usually we refer to the time period between 1789 to 1815 as the period of the French Revolution. So we refer to the time period between 1789 to 1815 as the period of the French Revolution. So in this class, we will be discussing the factors, basically the factors responsible for the outbreak of the French Revolution. Why did this revolution break out? What is the outcome of this revolution? That we will be discussing in this particular class. That's the point. So after the end of this class, you may go through the 9th standard NCERT. That's the point. So after listening to this class, I am sure you will not have any kind of problem in understanding the chapter, that is the first chapter of 9th standard NCERT. So the point is, the France in the 18th century AD was ruled by a dynasty called the Bourbon dynasty. France, basically in the 18th century AD, was ruled by a dynasty called the Bourbon dynasty, and the rulers of this dynasty, the Bourbon dynasty, were referred to as the Louis. So for example, Louis I, Louis II, Louis III, Louis IV, etc., etc. So the point is, the dynasty which ruled France in 18th century AD happened to be, or was called, Bourbon dynasty, and the rulers of this dynasty were referred to as the Louis. Louis I, II, III, IV, etc., etc. And the Louis at the time of the French Revolution was Louis XVI. Louis XVI. So Louis XVI was the French ruler at the time of the French Revolution in 1789. That's the point. So the French Revolution was a revolution against political anarchy. I will explain what that we mean in a couple of slides. The French Revolution was a revolution against political anarchy. It was a revolution against the political despotism of the Louis. The French Revolution was a revolution against the socio-economic inequalities. The French Revolution was a revolution against the socio-economic inequalities. What are those inequalities? I will be explaining them shortly. At the point. So the French Revolution was led by the common people. The common people were the one who took up this revolution. That's the point. And as a result of this revolution, the rule of the Bourbons over France came to an end. As a result of this revolution, basically the Bourbon rule over France ended. The Bourbon rule came to an end in France. That's the point. In a way, France became, in fact, in course of time, France ended up becoming a republic. From monarchy, France became a republic at the end of this revolution. As a result of this revolution, this is exactly what happened. That's the point. So we will not be covering the entire time span between 1789 to 1815. That is not what we will be doing in this class, because it takes at least 4 to 5 hours for us to complete this entire French Revolution. But in this class of next 30 or 40 minutes duration, we will be discussing basically the factors responsible for the outbreak of the French Revolution. Up to a point. We will basically take a look at the events between 1789 to say 1791. The events between these 2-year time period we will discuss in this particular class. Let me repeat this point once again. This class is not about the entire course of the French Revolution, because the entire time span of a French Revolution is for about 16 years between 1789 to in fact it is more than it is more than 20 years, 1789 to 1815. This entire period we will not be covering. We will only be covering the first 2 years of this revolution. Got the point? And we will mostly focus on the factors responsible for it. So let me repeat this point once again for you. The point is, the French Revolution was a revolution against the political despotism. It was a revolution against the socio-economic inequalities existing in France. The socio-economic inequalities existing in France. So we have a historian, a Russian historian, a Russian scholar by name Kropotkin. So we have a Russian scholar by name Kropotkin, who famously dubbed the French Revolution as the mother of all revolutions. He famously called the French Revolution as the mother of all revolutions. Why? The reason being, all other revolutions in one or the other way were related to one or the other aspect of life. Let me repeat this point once again for you. A Russian scholar by name Kropotkin famously referred to the French Revolution as the mother of all revolutions. The reason being, the French Revolution, the French Revolution in one or the other way impacted many aspects of the people's life. The French Revolution was not confined to any one area, like in the case of the Industrial Revolution, which is mostly affected the commercial aspects. The French Revolution, let me repeat this point once again for you. So for example, many revolutions have occurred in different parts of the world. So for example, Industrial Revolution. We will, in course of time, we will be discussing this Industrial Revolution later. This Industrial Revolution was mostly confined to the manufacturing activity. The Industrial Revolution in a great way impacted the commerce. It greatly impacted the commerce. But the French Revolution, on the other hand, was not confined to any one single area. The French Revolution was not confined to any one single area. It impacted various aspects of the people's lives. And hence, Kropotkin called the French Revolution as the mother of all the revolutions. The mother of all revolutions. Got the point? I just mentioned this here itself. Now take a look at the factors responsible for the outbreak of the French Revolution. And I told you the point is, slogans like liberty, equality, and fraternity became the slogans. These were the slogans of the French Revolution. Liberty, equality, and fraternity were in fact the slogans of the French Revolution. Now, let us take a look at the reasons or the causes responsible for the outbreak of the French Revolution. Why did this happen? Got the point? Got the point? Yes, Shri Lakshmi, I will be doing the same. Fine. So take a look at the factors. One is the social factor. Basically, the French society of the 18th century AD was a very, very unjust society. The French society of the 18th century AD was a very unjust society. So, for example, say the French society by and large was divided into 3 estates. The French society was a very unjust society, and it was divided into three estates, namely the clergy, who happened to be the first estate. Clergy meaning the members of the church, the people associated with the church, they are called as the clergy, and they were regarded as the members of the first estate. The second estate comprised of the nobility. Nobility, these are basically the large landlords. These are basically the large landlords. And nobility also happens to be the officers, the ministers working in the administration. That is, they were part and parcel of that monarchic administrative system. So basically, nobility comprised the second estate. The third estate comprised the other sections of the French society, the common people. So basically, the third estate comprised of peasants, it comprised of artisans, workers, and it also comprises of the middle class. Let me repeat. The third estate is basically a very heterogeneous class comprising of peasants, artisans, workers, middle classes. So basically middle classes like say teachers, doctors, lawyers, etc., etc. So basically I just told you we are now discussing the causes for the outbreak of the French Revolution. The first cause is the social factor, that is the French society was a very unjust society. So the French society was basically divided into three estates: the first estate, the second estate, and the third estate. So how is this society unjust? Basically, the first and the second estate put together accounted for just 2% of the entire French population. So basically, the first and the second estate accounted for just 2% of the entire French population, yet they owned 20% of the lands of France. They had ownership over 20% of the lands of France. Take a look at this one. The clergy, that is the first estate, and the nobility, the second estate, they just accounted for 2% of the entire French population, yet they controlled or they had ownership over 20% of the lands, the agricultural lands available in France. Got the point. Whereas the 98% of the French population comprised of the third estate. 98%. So the point is, the first and the second estate, they are also referred to as the privileged class. The first and the second estate, they are also referred to as the privileged class. Just a minute, it is creating some problem. So basically, the first and the second estate, the members of the first and second estate, they are also referred to as the privileged class because they were exempted from taxes. They were basically exempted from paying taxes. So just take a look at this point once again. The first and the second estates, they were owning 20% of the country's lands. They were very rich. They had the financial muscle to pay taxes to the government. Yet this group, that is the first and the second estate, were essentially exempted from paying taxes. On the other hand, the common people, who accounted for 98% of the population, they were not very poor, they were not very rich. They were just middle classes or even poorer sections of the society. Yet the entire burden of taxation was on the shoulders of the third estate. The entire burden of taxation was on the shoulders of this estate, that is the third estate. So the first reason for the outbreak of the French Revolution is the unjust social conditions. You remember this point? The unjust social conditions is reason number one for the outbreak of the French Revolution. Got the point? The second condition, the second reason is the political factors. The political factors. I just told you that the rulers of France in the 18th century AD were referred to as the Louis. The rulers of France of the 18th century AD were referred to as the Louis. They belonged to a dynasty called Bourbon dynasty. I already told you, Bourbon dynasty. That's the point. And these Louis were very, very inefficient rulers. The Louis were very, very inefficient, incompetent rulers. They were spending lot of money on wars, which they were ultimately losing. I told you the Louis were very, very inefficient, incapable rulers. They were spending lot of money on wars. They were spending lot of money on fighting wars, which they were losing. At the point. So in a way, they were wasting lot of public money on the wars. Second, the Louis were also leading a very, very luxurious life. In fact, of all the rulers of Europe, the rulers of France were in fact spending a very, very luxurious life. So they were using people's money, that is, they were using the taxes to lead a very, very, very luxurious life. So the point is, on one hand, the Louis were spending a lot of money on extravagance. They were spending a lot of money for their luxurious life. And second, they were also wasting money on the wars. They were fighting numerous wars, which they were ultimately, in most of these wars, the Louis were getting defeated. So the corruption in the administration during the Louis period was also rampant. The corruption in the administration was also very, very rampant. That's the point. So take a look at the wars which the Louis fought. So the Louis, basically between 1756 to 1763, a war was fought in United States of America called the 7-Year War. So basically between 1756 to 1763, a war was fought in United States of America called the 7-Year War. The war is called the 7-Year War because the war essentially was fought for 7 years. 1756 to 1763 is 7 years. Between whom was this fought? It was fought between France and Britain for domination and control of United States of America. So basically, both France and Britain tried to bring the entire United States of America under their control, and it is this attempt by both of these countries resulted in a war called the 7-Year War. So let me repeat, both of these European powers fought a war in United States of America called the 7-Year War. This war was fought between both of them with a view to have their domination and control over the United States of America. But what was the outcome? The outcome is a victory for Britain. In this war, Britain emerged victorious. So in this entire war, France had to spend a lot of money. Basically, France had spent a lot of money, and ultimately France lost most of its money on these wars. That's the point. That is, the Louis were basically involved in this war. So when France lost the war, the popularity of the Louis had taken a dip. This is what happened. And similarly, between 1775 to 1783, a war broke out in United States of America called the American War of Independence. So basically, between 1775 to 1783, a war broke out in United States of America. Another war in United States of America called the American War of Independence. Got my point? So basically, in 1775, the people of America themselves revolted against Britain. Like India, United States of America was also a British colony. Like India, United States of America was also a British colony. But in 1775, the people of America revolted against Britain and declared independence. That's the point. And by doing so, America became, that is, the United States became the first country to come out of the colonial rule. By doing so, United States became the first country to come out of the colonial rule. That's the point. That's the point. So the whole point is, during this American War of Independence, once again, the French participated in the war on the side of the colonists. So basically, Britain had 13 colonies in United States of America. The people of these colonies are referred to as the colonists. The colonists. So it is these colonists that revolted against Britain in 1775. So when the colonists revolted, immediately the French ruler extended his support to the colonists. In fact, the French ruler gave the financial support to the colonists. He also gave lot of he also provided arms and ammunition to the colonists to fight against Britain. This is what happened. That's the point. So the point is, the American War of Independence was a war taken up by the colonists against their colonial power, that is Britain. But since France had enmity with Britain, the French ruler immediately supported the colonists to fight against their colonial power, that is Britain. But as a result, what happened? France had to spend a lot of money even for this American War of Independence. So basically, France in a way ended up spending a lot of money even in the American War of Independence. So the whole point which I'm trying to convey is, the second important reason for the outbreak of the French Revolution is a political factor, that is, the rulers of France, that is the Louis, were very, very inefficient, incapable rulers. They were spending a lot of money on the wars which they were losing. Example, two wars. One is the 7-Year War and the second is the American War of Independence. Got the point. So all of these wars were in a way ended up becoming very, very costly affairs for France. And second, I told you, these Louis were also leading a very, very luxurious life. And they were leading a luxurious life at the cost of the common people of France. The third factor for the outbreak of the French Revolution is the intellectual factors. So no revolution can succeed without first a revolution in the realm of ideas. You understand this point? This is true in most cases. This is true. Intellectual factor, this is true in most cases. It is true with respect to most of the revolutions. So no revolution can actually succeed without first succeeding in the realm of ideas. Without first succeeding in the realm of ideas. So the whole point is, France in a way was lucky to have a number of intellectuals in the 18th century AD. France in a way was lucky to have number of intellectuals in the 18th century AD. These intellectuals began analyzing the problems facing France, and these intellectuals also began to provide solution to the various problems facing France. I hope I am clear. So the point, let me repeat this point once again. The intellectuals, they play a very, very important role in enlightening the other members of the society. So these intellectuals, France in a way was lucky to have numerous intellectuals in 18th century AD, and these intellectuals carefully analyzed the various problems facing France, and these intellectuals also began to provide solution to the problems facing France. Who are these intellectuals? Say for example, Voltaire, a great man. Then Rousseau, Montesquieu, physiocrats. Physiocrats are basically the economists of France. The economists of France. So these were the various intellectuals who lived in France in 18th century AD, and these intellectuals, through their writings, began to enlighten the other sections of the French society. So what are their writings? Basically, Voltaire was a rationalist. Voltaire was a rationalist. So Voltaire basically gave a call to the people to give importance to reason. Voltaire gave a call to the people to come out of their blind beliefs to the customs and the traditions. Voltaire gave a call to the people to to accept things only when they are explained through reason. So Voltaire was a champion of reason. Voltaire gave a call to the people to not accept anything until and unless they are explained through reason. So he was a bitter critic of church. Voltaire was a bitter critic of church. Got my point? Voltaire was a bitter critic of blind adherence to the customs and traditions. He, in a way, gave a call to the people to develop a rational outlook. So that is the foremost contribution of Voltaire. Got your point? Rousseau, on the other hand, uh, emphasized on the sovereignty of the people. Rousseau began to popularize the idea of sovereignty of the people. Basically, Rousseau argued that the governments have to be run only on the basis of the will of the people. Basically, Rousseau, what is the idea which is spread? He began advocating that the power lies with all the people, the sovereignty lies with all the people, and therefore he argued that the governments have to be run only on the basis of the will of the people. In other words, if the people are not in favor of a certain policy, then the government should not take up such policies. That is what was what began to be, basically Rousseau was the one who began advocating the idea of supremacy of people or sovereignty of the people. Montesquieu was another intellectual who was in favor of a constitutional monarchy. So basically, Montesquieu was against absolute monarchy. He was a champion of a constitutional monarchy. So Montesquieu argued that the power should not lie only with one individual. The power should be distributed in three organs, that is the legislature, executive, and judiciary. So in a way, Montesquieu was the one who came with the idea of power being distributed between three organs of the government. Basically, he gave a call for the strict separation of powers of the government between the legislative wing, the executive wing, and the judicial wing. So basically, he was against concentration of all the powers in the hands of a monarch. He was okay with constitutional monarchy, but he wanted the powers of the government to be distributed in three different organs of the government, that is legislature, executive, and judiciary. So in a way, he gave a call to the people for the separation of powers. Physiocrats, these are the economists of France. They were they began finding fault with the various economic policies of Britain. Economic policies followed in France. So basically, they began coming up with numerous proposals with a view to reform the economic system of France. So the physiocrats began to make proposals for the reform of the economic system of France. So the whole point is, France in a way was very, very lucky to have numerous intellectuals in the 18th century AD. These intellectuals carefully analyzed various problems facing France, and they began to present solution to the problems facing France. Examples, say for example, Rousseau, Montesquieu, Physiocrats, Voltaire, etc., etc. The point is, the ideas of these intellectuals began to be debated even among the common people. So common people began discussing all of these ideas proposed by these intellectuals. Got my point. So a large number of people of France were convinced that France, in a way, had to adopt all of these ideas proposed by these intellectuals. So, in a way, the point is the intellectual factors also played a very, very important role in the French Revolution. They are one of the reasons for the outbreak of the French Revolution. Got my point. Then we have the impact of the American Revolution. I just discussed with you. American Revolution was fought between 1770. This American Revolution or American War of Independence, it all means one and the same. American Revolution or American War of Independence is one and the same. I told you, like India, America was also a British colony. In fact, in the present day United States of America, Britain had altogether 13 colonies. 13 colonies. So in 1775, the people of these 13 colonies rose in revolt against their colonial master, Britain. So the people of these 13 colonies revolted against Britain in 1775. And eventually, the people of these 13 colonies declared independence. And by doing so, they became the first in the entire world to come out of the colonialism. They became the first in the entire world to come out of colonial rule. That's the point. So the point is, during the course of this American Revolution or during the course of the American War of Independence, a number of French nationals participated in the American Revolution on the side of the 13 colonies. The point is, during the course of this American Revolution, a number of French nationals went all the way to United States to participate in the war on the side of the colonists. On the side of the colonists. At a point. Say, for example, one such a French national who participated in this American Revolution was the Fiat, and other is Lafayette. Both happened to be the French individuals, but both participated in the American Revolution on the side of the 13 colonists. They helped the colonists in becoming free from the British control. So the whole point is, which I am trying to convey is, for Lafayette and Fiat, the American Revolution became a dress rehearsal for the French Revolution. The point is, Fiat and Lafayette also very actively participated. Let me repeat. Both Fiat and Lafayette also very actively participated in the French Revolution. The French Revolution broke out just a decade after the American Revolution. So the American Revolution happened between 1775 to 83, and in 1789 the French Revolution broke out. So in a way, the point is, the French Revolution broke out just a decade later the American Revolution, and Fiat and Lafayette, who actively participated in the American Revolution, they also took very active part in the French Revolution. So therefore, for the French youth, the American Revolution in a way became a dress rehearsal for the French Revolution that broke out just a decade later. So it became a practice for the French youth. The American Revolution in a way became a practice for the French Revolution that broke out just a decade after the American Revolution. So the point is, the French youth learned their lessons from the American Revolution. That's the point which I'm trying to convey. That's the point. So the impact of the American Revolution on the French Revolution is undoubtedly immense. That's the point which I'm trying to convey. So this is another important reason for the outbreak of the French Revolution. Then the final reason for the outbreak of the French Revolution is the economic factors. Basically, by 1788, France was in deep economic trouble. By 1788, France was in deep economic trouble. So France was in trouble because by 1788, uh, the debt burden on France increased substantially. Basically, since the Louis fought numerous wars, which they ultimately lost. The point is, the various wars fought by the Louis resulted in increased debt burden on French people. It basically increased the debt burden on the French people. Basically, the French rulers took a lot of money as loans to participate in the wars. Got my point? So, in a way, all of these wars increased the debt burden, the net debt burden on France. So, the point is, by 1788, the French rulers were finding extremely difficult even to pay interest on the loans which they had taken. The point is, by 1788, France was in deep economic trouble. The economic trouble was due to the increased debt burden. And debt increased essentially because the French rulers had taken large sums of money as loans to fight various wars. Which examples of these wars I already gave. I gave only 2 examples of wars. In fact, the French rulers had fought numerous wars in continental Europe, and all of these had resulted in increased debt burden. That's the point. So, what worsened the situation was the poor harvest of the 1780s. So, in 1780s, successively there were poor harvest. At a point. So, the point is the agricultural production continuously declined beginning from the 1780s. As a result, the availability of food grains in the market reduced substantially. Let me repeat. Already, France was in deep economic trouble, but what compounded the problems further is the poor harvest of the 1780s. So, beginning from 1780s, the agricultural production has been on a continuous decline. That's the point. As a result, the prices of the food grains were on the rise. Inflation was very, very high. So, people of France were finding it very, very difficult to meet their subsistence needs. Let me repeat this point once again. The inflation rate was very, very high. So the cost of the bread had increased substantially. Bread being the staple food for the Europeans, including the French. The cost of a living had increased substantially. The availability of food became scarce. So, as a result, the common people of France began to find fault with the French rulers. The common people of France came to the conclusion that the reason for all of their problems is the economic mismanagement of the French rulers. So the whole point is already France was in deep economic trouble, and what further compounded the problems is the poor harvest of the 1780s. So there was not much for people to eat. The prices of the essential commodities began to increase. The life of the common people became very, very difficult. That is, the common people found difficult to meet even their food needs, and therefore the common people began to hold the king responsible for all of their problems. This is what happened. And therefore, because of the economic troubles, Louis XVI, I just told you, Louis XVI happened to be the king of France at the time of the French Revolution. So to overcome the economic problems, Louis XVI began appointing the physiocrats as the finance ministers, or as the director general of finance department, or the finance minister. So physiocrats, I already told you, physiocrats are basically the economists of France. So Louis XVI, with a view to overcome the economic problems, Got the point? Economic crisis began appointing physiocrats as the Director General of Finance Department. Otherwise, you can call them as the finance ministers. For example, say one such finance minister who was appointed was Turgot. Turgot was appointed as finance minister, and this man made three proposals. One, he proposed free trade. That is, he recommended the government to remove all trade restrictions. That's the point. One is he encouraged free trade. Second, he recommended austerity measures. Austerity measures means he recommended the government to no stop wasteful expenditure, to reduce wasteful expenditure. Third, he also recommended the government to impose taxes on the privileged classes. I told you in the beginning itself, the privileged class, that is the first and the second estates, the members of the first and the second estates, they were exempted from taxes. So who bore the entire burden of taxes? It is the third estate only. So the members of third estate, who are middle class and poor class people, the poorer sections of the society, yet the entire burden of taxes was on the shoulders of the third estate only. But this Turgot recommended the government to start imposing taxes even on the privileged class. But the privileged class were very, very powerful. That's the point. So therefore, the privileged class members pressurized the king, and as a result, under the pressure of the privileged classes, Turgot was eventually removed as the finance minister. Basically, Turgot was the one who recommended the government to impose taxes on the privileged classes, but all of these privileged classes ganged up against Turgot. They put pressure on the king to remove him as a finance minister, and eventually, under the pressure of the privileged classes, Turgot was removed as finance minister. Then afterwards, the king later appointed one Mr. Necker as the finance minister. So after Turgot, Necker was appointed as the finance minister, but Necker too almost reiterated the same recommendations as that of Turgot. So Necker too gave the same kind of recommendations as that of Turgot. This is what happened. So what happened by 1789? By the end of 1789, the economic crisis further deepened in France. That is, France was in great economic distress by 1789. So basically, there was not much money left in the royal treasury even to pay interest on the loans. By 1789, already by 1788, there were too many economic problems in France. But by 1789, these economic problems further deepened. So basically, there was not much money left in the royal treasury even to pay interest payments, even to make interest payments on the loans. And therefore, Necker, that is the finance minister, once again advised the king to impose taxes on the privileged classes. He once again reiterated the same recommendations made by Turgot. So basically, this man recommended, that is, Necker recommended the king to impose taxes on the privileged classes so that the king would have enough money to make interest payments. That's the point. So therefore, upon the recommendations of Necker, the king summoned the assembly of the notables. Upon the recommendations of Necker, the king summoned the assembly of the notables. The assembly of the notables is nothing but a group comprising of senior nobles and officials. The assembly of notables was basically a group comprising of senior ministers, senior officials, and nobles. Got the point? So the point is, the king put forward the proposal of taxing even the privileged classes before the assembly of the notables. What did the king do? Basically, the king put forward the proposal of taxing the king put forward the proposal of imposing taxes on the privileged classes before the assembly of the notables. Let me repeat this point once again for you. What did the king do? The king basically put the proposal of imposing taxes on the privileged classes before the assembly of the notables. But the assembly of the notables argued that the king had no power to impose additional taxes. The assembly of the notables argued that the only authority to decide the question of imposition of taxes happened to be a state general. So let's take a look at the sequence of events. So basically, the economic crisis deepened further by 1789. So therefore, Necker once again recommended the king to impose taxes on the privileged classes, and therefore the king summoned the assembly of the notables. That is basically the king summoned the assembly of the notables. Assembly of the notables, this is basically a group of senior most nobles and officials. And the king put forward the proposal of imposing additional taxes. That is, the king put forward the proposal of imposing taxes on the privileged classes before the assembly of the notables. But the assembly of the notables argued that the king had absolutely no power to collect taxes from the people, from the privileged classes. The assembly of the notables argued that the only authority which can decide the question of collecting taxes from the notables is the estate general. I will explain what is estate general shortly, but the whole point which I am trying to convey is the assembly of notables basically argued that the king absolutely have no power to impose taxes, additional taxes on the people. The assembly of the notables basically argued that the only authority to decide the question of imposition of additional taxes on the people is the estate general. So what is this estate general? Estate general is basically the traditional legislative. It is basically the traditional legislative body of France. Estate general is basically the traditional legislative body of France. But this legislative body had not met since 1614. So we are in 1789, but this legislative body had not met since 1614. That is, the legislative body had not met for about 175 years. But the assembly of the notables argued that the only authority to decide the question of imposition of additional taxes is the estate general. So therefore, the assembly of the notables advised the king to summon the estate general. Basically, the assembly of the notables recommended the king to summon the estate general to decide the question of imposition of additional taxes on the people. But this estate general was not meeting since 1614. So it remained closed since 1614 AD. That is, it remained closed for about 175 years. And therefore, the king ordered Necker to conduct elections to the estate general. So the point is, the king ordered Necker, the finance minister, to conduct elections to the estate general, and elections were conducted in 1789 itself, and the members of the three estates were elected. I told you French society was divided into three estates. So the point is, in 1789, upon the orders of the king, elections were conducted to the estate general, and the members of the three estates were elected. So the first estate contained the representatives of the clergy. The first estate contained the representatives of the clergy, and about 300 members, not about 300 members were elected as the members of the first estate. The second estate contained the representatives of the nobility. They contained the representatives of the nobility at a point. And another 300 members were elected as members of the second estate. And the third estate contained representatives of the third estate. In fact, the third estate contained representatives of the commoners and the bourgeoisie. So basically, the third estate comprised representatives of the peasants, the artisans, the workers, the bourgeoisie, etc. Bourgeoisie is basically middle class. And 600 members were elected as representatives of the third estate. So basically in 1789, elections were conducted to the Estate General. The elections were conducted by Necker, and the members of the three estates were elected. Estate 1, Estate 2 and Estate 3. Estate 1 represented the clergy, Estate 2 represented the nobility, Estate 3 represented the peasants, the artisans, the workers, the bourgeoisie, that is the middle classes. And altogether there were 600 members who were elected as the representatives of the third estate. So this estate was summoned in 1789 itself. Elections were conducted, and the Estate General was summoned in 1789 itself. Immediately, once the Estate General was summoned, a dispute broke out between the members of the three estates. Immediately, a dispute broke out between the three estates, the first, second and the third estate. The dispute was over voting. The dispute was basically over voting. So the first and the second estate, the members of the first and the second estate demanded voting by estate, whereas the members of the third estate, demanded voting by head. Voting by head. So what do you mean by voting by estate? So basically, one estate, the first estate comprised of 300 members, the second estate comprised of another 300 members, and the third estate comprised of 600 members. I hope I am clear. So basically, the entire first estate was considered as one vote. The second estate comprising of 300 members was considered as a second vote, and the entire third estate comprising of 600 members was considered as a third vote. So basically, traditionally in France, voting by estate was conducted. Voting by estate means, for example, whether additional taxes should be imposed or not imposed according to, let me repeat this point once again. I told you immediately after the elections, the Estate General was summoned, and immediately a dispute broke out between the members of the three estates, the first, second and the third estate. The dispute was over voting. Basically, the members of the first and the second estate demanded voting by estate, whereas the members of the third estate demanded voting by head. What do you mean by voting by estate? Voting by estate means the entire first estate will be considered as just one vote. The entire second estate will be considered as just a second vote, and the entire third estate will be considered as the third vote. So, say for example, if the first and the second estate, if they oppose imposition of additional taxes, then no additional taxes shall be collected from the privileged classes. So basically, if the first and the second estate oppose, if they are against collecting additional taxes, then additional taxes shall not be collected from the privileged classes at all. But the point is, in the third estate there were 600 people, whereas the first and the second estate put together there were only 600. In the first estate only had 300, the second estate only had 300, but whereas the third estate had 600. Even if all the 600 people were in favor of imposing and collecting additional taxes from the privileged classes, since the voting is conducted, is carried out voting by estate, even if the third estate were in favor of collecting additional taxes from the people, from the privileged class, no such taxes can be collected. That is what I mean by voting by estate. So, whole point which I am trying to convey is, immediately a debate broke out between the members of the three estates. The members of the first and the second estates demanded voting by estate, whereas the members of the third estate demanded voting by head. Because if voting by head is carried out, possibly there would be many who may end up supporting imposition of additional taxes, imposition of taxes even on the privileged class. So for this reason, the members of the third estate demanded voting by head. So basically the estate general was summoned, but as soon as the estate general was summoned, a dispute broke out between the members of the three estates. One is voting by estate, the other is voting by head. And because of the continuous because of the ongoing debate because of the ongoing dispute between the members of the three estates, the king decided to suspend the estate general, which was basically meeting after a gap of about 175 years. The point is, dispute broke out between the members of these three estates, and the members of the third estates remained unrelenting in their demand, and therefore the king immediately, because of the continuous dispute between the members of the three groups, the king basically decided to suspend the estate general, which was meeting after 175 years. This is what happened. At the point. So on 20th June 1789, the members of the third estate found the gates of the estate general locked up upon the orders of the king. Basically, the king suspended the estate general. The estate general was a building, and upon the orders of the king, the estate general was locked up. And when the members of the third estate assembled before the gates on 20th June 1789, they found the gates of the estate general locked up upon the orders of the king. And therefore, immediately the members of the third estate assembled in the tennis court. Immediately, the members of the third members of the third estate assembled in the tennis court, which was close to that of the third estate. I'm sorry. The members of the third estate assembled close to that of the estate general. They assembled at a place. They assembled in a tennis court. This tennis court is located close to that of the estate general, and the members of the third estate took an oath, which became popularly known as the tennis court oath. The tennis court oath. And this happened on 20th June 1789. So there are three important points of this tennis court oath. One, they decided to continue their meeting. That is, the members of the third estate, even if not allowed by the king, decided to continue their meetings. They decided to prepare a new constitution for France. They took a decision to form a new assembly, a new legislative body in France called the National Assembly. Take a look at what happened on 20th June. Basically, because of the dispute between the members of the first, second, and the third estate, the king basically decided to suspend the estate general, which was meeting after a gap of about 175 years. When the members of the third estate assembled before the estate general on 20th June 1789, they found the gates of the estate general locked up, and immediately they marched to they went to a nearby tennis court, which was located close to that of the estate general. They assembled in the tennis court and took an oath called the tennis court oath. happened. They took this oath on 20th June 1789. So what is the important points of the oath? Basically, they decided to continue their meeting despite being opposed by the king. They decided to prepare a new constitution. That's the point. For France, they decided to form a new legislative body called the National Assembly. So the legislative body that was in operation in France since a long time is the Estates General. But the members of the Third Assembly decided to form a new legislative body called the National Assembly in the place of the Estates General. That's the point. So these were the three decisions taken in the tennis court oath. That's the point. But what was the reaction of the king? Basically, the Louis, that is the Louis XVI, the king of France, the ruler of France, viewed the activities of the Third Estate as a defiance of his authority. Basically, the ruler, that is Louis XVI, took the activities of the Third Estate seriously. He viewed the activities of the Third Estate or the members of the Third Estate as a defiance of his authority, and immediately he ordered his troops to suppress the Third Estate. Basically, the king immediately ordered his troops to take action against the members of the Third Estate. Basically, the king issued orders to suppress the members of the Third Estate. The people, the members of the Third Estate, in retaliation, rose in rebellion against the king. The point is, when the king himself ordered his troops to suppress, or even when the king ordered the troops to suppress the National Assembly or the members of the Third Estate, the members of the Third Estate in turn decided to revolt against the king. Get the point? So the actual rebellion happened on July 14, 1789. We call this as the fall of Bastille. Basically, when the king ordered the troops to suppress the National Assembly or the members of the Third Estate, the members of the Third Estate in turn decided to revolt against the king. And the actual revolt happened on 14th July 1789. We call this as the fall of Bastille. Bastille was basically a fortress, a prison cum fortress located in France, in Paris. Bastille was basically a fortress, a prison cum fortress located in Paris. So the Bastille was viewed by the commoners as a symbol of the Bourbon tyranny. Let me repeat, the Bastille, the fortress Bastille, was viewed by the Third Estate, by the commoners, as a symbol of the Bourbon tyranny, because basically those people who were opposed to the Louis were imprisoned and tortured at Bastille. Those whosoever were opposed to the Louis were basically imprisoned at Bastille. They were severely tortured at Bastille, and therefore the commoners viewed Bastille as a symbol of the Bourbon tyranny. So therefore, on 14th of July 1789, the commoners took up arms, and they basically destroyed the Bastille fort. They basically attacked the Bastille, they destroyed Bastille, they looted the arms and ammunition stored in the Bastille fortress. They also set free the prisoners who were arrested by the ruler. Basically, the prisoners who were imprisoned at the Bastille were also set free. The arms ammunition stored in the Bastille were looted. So basically, the fall of Bastille is considered to be the beginning of the French Revolution. The fall of Bastille is considered to be the beginning of the French Revolution. It happened on 14th July 1789. So a few days later, after the fall of the Bastille, the king agreed for the new constitution. Basically, as things began to go out of control, as the people began taking up arms, as the commoners began taking up arms and start fighting against the troops of the king finally yielded. The king, that is the Louis, finally decided to accept the new constitution. Got the point? He agreed for the new constitution. He agreed to recognize the National Assembly instead of the Estate General. Got the point? He agreed for the formation of a National Assembly. He agreed for the new constitution. He agreed to make France as a constitutional monarchy. So basically, till 1789, France was an absolute monarchy. But after the fall of the Bastille, the king agreed for a new constitution. The king agreed to recognize the National Assembly as the new legislative body of France. The king, that is the Louis XVI, also agreed to accept the constitutional monarchy in France instead of the absolute monarchy. So in today's class, we have seen the factors responsible for the outbreak of the French Revolution. The French Revolution happened between 1789 to 1815. This is what we call as the period of French Revolution. But in today's session, we have just taken a look at a part of this French Revolution. So first in this class, we have discussed the reasons, the actual reasons for the outbreak of the French Revolution. Clear? So that's all for today. In the next class, I will take up discussion on the other topic of modern world history. Got the point? So after listening to this class, I'm sure you will not have any problem in understanding this topic. You may kindly open the 9th standard NCERT and start going through that particular topic. Got the point? In case you have any doubts in understanding this topic, you may well raise your doubts in our next class. That's all for today. See you in the next class.